When should you get help? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, this is Jill from the North Woods talking about issues and solving life's problems one small step at a time. There had been a time when you would ask me when I was a kid, do you have help? Do you have someone helping you? And I'd be like, nope, I'm all by myself. Raised by wolves, all by myself. I'm all I have. And this is kind of the personality I got was I only have me. I can depend on me. And I have to figure out in life how to depend on me, know how to do it. But now that I am older and I think back about it, my parents both, while they had their problems, were good at certain things. My dad was educationally, even though he didn't have a big education, was really smart. And so he was able to help me think things out, also homework and that kind of thing. And my mom was an exceptional reader. I had my grandmother, who was one of these Eastern European tough as nails kind of people. She was tough, but she had her own kinds of help, and she loved me dearly. She went out of her way to help me in every way that she can. And on that side of the family, one of my mom's cousins was a psychiatrist who tried desperately to help me, bought me diaries and tried to get me to open up about my communication. And her sister, who was just the kindest, warmest human being on the planet. I had close friends, for sure, but, we were kids. We were really young, and so we really couldn't help each other solve the big problems. In fact, most of them were in worse shape than I was. They had both parents as alcoholics, or they had two parents with alcoholics and two parents with mental illness in their family, violence, that kind of thing. So I felt pretty lucky that I did not have that going on. And then the other part of it, too, is I had teachers that cared. I remember one teacher that was particularly close to me in 7th grade helped me out a ton. She did the best that she could. And while the counselors in our school weren't very good, I'll put it that way, they did have resources. And so even though they could not help me, they could point me in the right direction to get me help. So I really had this cloud of people who were there and who were there for me and were there. And I sort of had to think about who was the right person to pick at any given moment. And then I also had books. The library I grew up in, way up in the North Woods, was really small. Terrible, actually. But when I was visiting my grandmother in Chicago, I got a library card. And I had the whole world of books open to me. So through books and all of that, I started solving my problems. So while I felt very much alone and felt like I was raising myself, I actually had quite a bit of help. So think about, I think, first of all, when you're thinking about if you need help, who's in your circle? Maybe it's someone at work that you're not particularly close to, but they're really particularly good at this kind of thing. I talked to someone at work about a problem I was having, namely with my house. And I said, I just can't seem to sort it out. We were on a trip together, and she helped me go through it step by step and helped me figure it out. I wasn't close with her. I didn't know her, but I saw her for someone who could be a sort of a third party to help me. But think about those people that are in your life who could help. Maybe you haven't asked them before, but I think the important thing, too, is to know that you are a resource to them, too. There are things you are good at. There are things that you are able to help other people with. You can help them. And so when they ask you for help, it's time to be reciprocal. That's how the world works. I think I am very much a person of the circle of trust. I trust people so much. And then when they prove themselves to be more trustworthy, I trust them a little bit more. And I learn where the limits are. There are probably 4 or 5 people in this world I talk about politics to, but not one person more. I won't talk about politics to other people because we live in an age where you really can't trust talking politics to other people, that kind of thing. So the social thing is that when you're looking for help, who's around you? Friends, neighbors, coworkers, classmates, local churches. Local churches will always have a pastor who will help you, or a priest, or someone, even if you don't go to worship there. Like I said, it's sometimes so valuable to have just someone that even if you don't go there, that you can bounce ideas off of. Even my trainer, she's very smart. And sometimes, you're in the midst of doing push-ups and you can say, I was kind of thinking about blah, 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 or I'm thinking about going on Monjero. What could I take or what could I do to help preserve my muscles? You kind of, like I said, identify this cloud of people who have their good points, their bad points that are inside or outside certain circles of trust. And the next part is certainly professional help. Now, I was poor and we could never have afforded professional help. The closest thing that I came to for professional help was the school's counselors. And like I said, they weren't very good. I hate to say it. They just were not that helpful, but they had resources. And so that was another thing. We live in a different era now. There are therapists, life coaches, career coaches, health coaches. I sought a nutritionist about a year ago to help me figure out some problems I was having with protein drinks. They were making me nauseous and helping me get on a better diet. Social workers. There's also, if you're in school, teachers, professors, TAs that are there, and they can sometimes, like I said, be that person that you can talk to. But also, like I said, pastors, priests, rabbis. There's something called a spiritual director, which is someone who is trained in how to, coach you along. That's something that would be really interesting to me to try to do, but I would love to do that. But, I think that that's a particular training and you get a certification out of it. Or financial advisors, credit counselors, nutritionists. Like I said, there's all sorts of things. Then comes, even medical professionals, doctors, nurses. If you're in the process of abuse, they might not be able to help you with that abuse, but they will be able to help you find the right place to go. So just kind of keep that in mind, that there's that step up outside of your own circle. There is the idea of professionals out there. And they're not there to become your best friend. They just need to be the right person at the right time to answer the right question. Then there's community-based support. And the community-based support can be something like I said, churches and synagogues again, pastors, priests, those kinds of things. There are support groups, AA, Al-Anon or Alateen, if you are related to someone who's having alcoholics. I spent many years in that. Grief support groups, parenting support groups. If you have some kind of a chronic disease, there's groups for that as well. But they're to help you. People who have been there, done that, and can help you through a certain situation. Invaluable. Nonprofit organizations, depending on what you need, that will help you get through food pantries or housing assistance, or if you need an emergency place to stay or an emergency place to put your pet during, some kind of emergency. They know where you can reach out and find help. Those are always really important. I used to have a roommate who was someone who helped people who were brand new immigrants who, came through the system and were moved to this town, and she would help them find jobs. And she would help them with their skill set, get jobs, know what the resources are, get housing. And these were people who applied through, basically their country went to war and the government brought them in so that they could be refugees from that particular war. Then there's crisis lines, tech support. I think there's 988 suicide, which is a text line. This is like a crisis community line that most communities have. I have known people who called them not when they were thinking of suicide, but if you are, or even hedging around that thought, certainly call those particular support groups. I know that at some points in my life, I wasn't suicidal, but I kind of just thought, I don't really have a future. I clearly do have a future. I wish 20-year-old me could see me now, that kind of thing. But essentially, they're there to talk things out, and they're very good at what they do, and they do get training. Community centers are available, as well as like the YMCA. Sometimes they have resources. Local government, local social services, human services, all have resources, most of which you don't have to pay for. And the library has free help. They will point you in the right direction. If you tell them what kind of problem you're having, there are people on staff there to help you find those resources. And it could be anything from technical help, free computer access if you don't have access to a computer, job searches, community events, or community resources. The whole success that I've had in my life was just me piecing together every kind of resource I could. like I said, no money, broke. My parents weren't really in it to help me in these situations. And I sort of kept grabbing whatever resources I could find to help me get through a particular situation that I was in. And I sort of solved everything one problem at a time. I didn't look at any one of these resources as, hey, so and so, I have this whole universe of problems. Instead, I would focus on whatever maybe the top one or two most pressing issues are, found whatever resource it was to help me through those two particular problems. And right now, we live in the age where there's online support. Well, not support, but advice. Reddit is a great place for it. Now, you have to be careful because Reddit people are just everyday people, just like you and me, but maybe they went through a thing and they know what, they did to get out of that situation. Same thing with forums, Facebook groups, all those kinds of things. It's good for light advice. Now, I've been going to some because as we talk about in my other channel, I've been losing weight and on the medication to lose weight. And so I was looking for help of how can I eat? How can I exercise? What do we do about this? And what do we do about that? And back when I was started, they were invaluable for me seeing not like scientific research, but what are people's real life experiences. Then there's even apps for therapy and coaching these days. There's BetterHelp. There's a few of them out there that are good at, having some kind of communication. I do believe, this is Jill, the psych major, Psych 101, rearing its ugly head. It's important to get together and meet people face to face at times. But, if you need some quick help, I think, these kind of online things are best. And then there's all sorts of different places of learning, like when it comes to YouTube or podcasts, depending on your need. Like I said, if you are really in serious trouble, go get help right now in your community, do it tomorrow. If you are doing something that you're trying to research, I know some people have put comments in my chat before about, they did this and they did that and it's not working for them and now they're struggling. Ways of getting those kinds of help. And even beyond the pastors and priests and faith-based churches and synagogues and things in your community, there's also faith-based apps that have opportunities to chat with someone. I know that there was a church I went to just once. I wanted to always go to this church. I visited it. I went to a service. And during the pandemic, they reached out to every person who ever visited that church because they had our email, not because they're against people who had never visited their church, but essentially asked us if we were okay and if we needed someone to talk with or pray with. So that's certainly a way that you can go do it. Depending, like I said, on your situation, there are also other kinds of passive help out there beyond the apps, the counseling, the coaching platforms. I even made use of a life coaching platform for my health. I did Coach.me for a while, and she held me accountable to my diet for a while. So that was kind of helpful to me when I was kind of struggling with losing weight. The other thing is you do what I have done, and there are certainly books that I used. Again, I sort of got myself out of a problem one book at a time. That's why this podcast is here. Solving problems as we can, just one book at a time. There's a lot of resources available. And then not only that, but there's even chatbots out there. There's a thing that's Wobot, which is a chatbot that is CBT techniques, which is cognitive behavior therapy. How can we use our cognitive, that's our thinking, our brain, and our behaviors to work ourselves out? All sorts of things like that. Calm. I've used Headspace. My company used to provide Headspace, and so I used it for a long time. Great relaxation, meditation, kind of, helping your brain calm down. So a lot of places that you can go. I've used for faith-based things, YouVersion Bible. I used Dwell, which is also very good, and the Halo app if you are Catholic. I really love the Halo app. I'm just not Catholic, but it's a fantastic app. And there's all sorts of different places for you to get help. And no matter what country you're in, like I said, if this becomes serious and you're in crisis or you're headed towards crisis, it's always best to get help before you get into a crisis. Like I said, there's crisis lifelines, suicide lines. They exist in Canada, Europe, all over the place that are there in order to help people. I know people who have worked at those lines and they get extensive training and they know, again, resources to help you. I mean, sometimes they may not be the person who can solve your problems, but they know where to find that person. And there's no judgment in doing any of this. I'm one of those people that does very well with learning on YouTube, learning on podcasts, blogs, newsletters, websites, training manuals. I'm able to read and pick up things and sort of get my life back on course through reading. But I have to tell you, I've never been a person to ask for help. I remember once I had to get like 500 books back to a doc at my way ago company. And I was like carrying them 10 by 10 by 10. And my boss comes up to me and he says, Jill, you can ask for help, right? And I'm not that person. I am not that person. There was that movie with Sandra Bullock where she had to walk around with a sign on her that said, make me ask for help or something. That's me. I'm not the best person at it, but you know what? When you need help, get help, because there's times where I struggled through a problem where I didn't need to struggle because I can stand on the shoulders of someone who has solved this problem, who has been there, who knows a new set of resources. So like I said, in some cases, help is a person. Sometimes it's a headphone when you're listening to someone, or sometimes it's a crisis line. But make sure you get the help you need to get yourself unstuck. I always think of it like this. So I screwed up my elbow a couple of months ago, and then I screwed it up in a second way. And my trainer says, well, why don't you go to the doctor? Because I feel like it's getting better. So I feel like whenever I'm making progress in a problem, it's fine. Now I don't have to go to the doctor. But as soon as I feel like I'm stuck, it's really great to get another set of eyes. Like I said, even if they are just someone from the outside looking in who can give you a little bit of advice. So please consider that, what kind of help in life you need. Maybe you're struggling with finances and you just need to get your finances back on track. Talk to someone, a financial counselor who's available. There's a lot of places out there, including Fidelity, who will talk to you for free and help you, sort of see where you're at in life. There are places that you can go to, but go and pinpoint the right kind of advice for you. I think my challenge to you is go find out what it is that you're stuck in life and figure out, is there someone that you could ask for help? Someone who could give you a gentle nudge, a soft answer, another set of eyeballs, and help you finally move forward. All right, everyone, thanks so much. I appreciate you watching and listening to this. Please remember that you can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. I am happy to answer questions or pick a topic that if you are saying, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a doctor, but if you're saying, hey, I'm kind of stuck in this topic, I'll try to do an episode on it for you too. Or I even got brand new software. I could bring you on here and we could talk about it, but most people are kind of shy about that. Thanks so much. Have a great week.